Welcome to Golden State Media Concepts Technology Podcast. This is episode 14. I'm your host, Jonathan Charney.
And I'm Shay Northrup.
Today we're going to talk about a little bit about Windows 10, BlackBerry's new phones, and Laser Bazookas, along with a little bit of VR. And first thing I wanted to mention a little bit was about Windows 10. And I know we've talked about it a little bit and how irritating it is. What I really wanted to discuss a little bit is how Microsoft's kind of breaking a social contract. That being, they're kind of forcing Windows 10 on everybody. And it wasn't something that historically they've done. And pretty much what it is you have to turn off the update to Windows 10. Now, the Windows 10 update for pretty much everything will end at the end of the month on July 29th. But I've got a couple of computers that are pretty much mission critical for me that should not run Windows 10 because it will literally destroy it if it updates it. I'm actually really upset about this, and it's really hard to tell that I am. But in my daily life, I've run into a number of people who ask me, "Hey, can I fix this? How do I get my other operating system back? All my files disappeared." And the main issue with it is it's not as easy as everybody thinks, especially now because a lot of laptops don't come with OS install disks anymore.
Right. I know if you restore your computer to a previous date, you can, but that can help you lose more and more files.
And I've run into a number of people in my daily life that did just that, and it fragged their computer.
Really? That's bad.
This is why I'm so upset. And this is one of the reasons I keep bringing it up. And I actually like Windows 10. There's aspects of it that I hate, like having a dual menu, kind of like control panel, for example.
Right.
That drives me nuts.
I really don't like the start bar. I don't care for Cortana. I don't understand why we need Cortana.
I generally turn Cortana off because I realized even my Core i7, it was sucking down cycles. So by turning it off, it actually sped up my computer a tad bit.
Oh, I might have to do that.
I really am upset. So I'm kind of watching my language a little bit because as a geek, part of what I love doing is helping people with technology. I fix people's computers. I've had people specifically give me their laptops and stuff because they had malware. Somebody's computer I fixed within the last year. It took me a week to actually get everything off.
Wow.
So I'm upset because when you harm people who aren't as technology savvy as I am, not only does it make my life a little harder, it infuriates them. And when technology just needs to work, I don't want to harper too much on it, but it really does upset me. And I am really curious what everybody out there thinks in podcast land, if that's a term. So I want you to go to the GSMC Technology Podcast Facebook page. This is episode 14. And I want you to comment on this on this one, specifically about that. And tell me what we think. How has it hurt you? And if we get enough out there, we'll kind of read a little bit about how it's harmed you, because I'm really curious. Oh, and if you've liked it, and if you're glad it's updated, comment too, because I'm really curious. Because I've run into more people who have been very upset about that. And
right. I've met a lot of people that have been upset about it too. And one of the things that I know it messed up for me is it messed up my audio drivers. And I know that's not just been a problem for me. I have a couple other friends that have come to me and been like, it screwed up my audio drivers. I had to completely reinstall them, or just they don't work now. So,
or had to find a generic one that just is not as good.
Right.
It's a big problem. Microsoft has traditionally supported legacy hardware, and I think they're getting out of that a little bit, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
Because for me as a geek, and I'm kind of assuming here for Shay, is if we like something, we're not going to change all because there's something better.
Stick to it. And one of the things that, there are a lot of people that have, found their way around the system and just use their Windows 7. And, I think Windows 7 is probably the best operating system we've had in a really long time. And it's kind of one of those things where if it's not broke, don't fix it. And they've been trying to fix it.
Part of the problem was XP kind of broke the cycle because they held on to it for so long because of Longhorn. Right. So, yeah, we're getting a little bit too much inside baseball, but I'm really curious what everybody thinks because I'm really upset. I think what they did is on the verge of being at least liable for some of the damages they've caused. And I know it sounds weird as, oh, you couldn't sue them over this, but when you install an update forcibly on people and people lose their data, to me, that's
Well, but data is valuable.
Yeah, and to me that's on the verge of being criminal for me personally, because I have stuff. And granted, I know we talked about this before. Have your computer and on-site storage and like a remote storage solution.
Yeah, back your stuff up.
But not everybody does it, or not everybody say like me. I'll do it this weekend, but if it went wrong before this weekend, I'm losing everything. So, please let us know. I personally am really curious, and we're going to switch up a little bit. And BlackBerry is apparently going to stop making their own OS. That's what it looks like, or they're at least releasing Android phones. They're a little late to the market. They're having a couple of different phones. They're calling it the Neon, the Argo, and the Mercury.
I didn't even realize BlackBerry was still around.
No, I was shocked by that too. And apparently the U.S. government is going to stop using BlackBerry. And one of the reasons, if I remember correctly, businesses like BlackBerry, because there's a little bit of baked-in security in there.
Right.
And so the Neon is going to have a 5.2-inch 1080p touchscreen, no physical keyboard. It's about time, BlackBerry. It's going to have a Snapdragon processor, 3 gigabytes of RAM, and 16 gigabytes of storage. That's a little thin on the storage.
It's a little thin on the RAM as well. Most, even like low-quality LG phones, at least have 4 gigabytes of RAM.
Yeah. It's going to have a, 2,610 milliamp battery. That's actually better than a lot of batteries out there. Mm-hmm. And a 13 megapixel rear-facing camera, an 8 megapixel front-facing camera. I'm assuming this is the low-end phone. That's actually not surprising.
What is the processor like?
It's a Snapdragon 617 processor. I actually don't know much about the ARM processor.
Yeah, I don't know very much about the Snapdragon.
And the Argo is a little bit better. It's using a 5.5-inch QHD screen. I'm assuming that's 1080p, 820 Snapdragon. See, this one has the 4 gigabytes of RAM with 32 gigabytes of storage. This is a little bit better.
Yeah, well, and the storage space is nice.
And this is the part that I'm excited about, at least for this phone. It's a 3,000 milliamp hour battery with Quick Charge 3.0. So it's a fast charging phone.
Ooh, nice.
So I'm assuming this is using the 2.1 app charger.
And what version of Android are they using?
I don't remember, and I know I've read a couple articles about it, and I don't remember any of them specifically mentioning that. I'm assuming they're using the latest and greatest one. Was it Marshmallow 6.0?
That would be great.
That's my assumption. They're either using that or 5 point something.
Okay.
And I'm assuming this is something that they've put their spin on, so it's a little bit more secure, or they've kind of retooled some of their apps and processes for it. This one has a 21 megapixel facing camera, 8 megapixel front facing camera. So that phone's not bad. I don't think it's comparable to the iPhone at all, but it's still not bad.
Not bad at all, actually. That sounds better than what I have.
And the Mercury is one I'm not quite sure what to make of. It has a 4.5-inch screen,
okay.
Snapdragon 625 processor, 3 gigabytes of RAM, 32 gigabytes of storage, 3,400 milliamp hour battery, and 18 megapixel rear-facing camera. So that one seems to be the middle of the road.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. Now, does it say what their prices are going to be on these phones?
I couldn't really find any exact prices on there. The only thing I was able to find was people were talking about how a $700 slider phone was just too much money, and most people are more interested in around a $400 device. The only thing that I have problems with that is the base model 16 gigabyte iPhone is around $600. The more you get, the closer to $1,000 they reach. So I'm assuming the high end of these phones, which my guess would be the Argo, would probably be $600 and up, would be my personal guess.
Okay.
So what do you think? I mean, I wouldn't drop my iPhone for an Android phone. I'm not sure if I'd even remotely jump towards a BlackBerry version of it, but what do you think?
I'm very interested in this because I've been kind of let down by the Android phone market recently, and I know I hear more and more complaints about Samsung. I'm not a big fan of LG, and I know HTC was big for a minute, but it seems like they're not doing so well either.
Samsung's biggest problem from people I know who have their phones is the bloatware that's on there, like the Golf Swing app, and there's a lot of stuff they do to it that just nukes the phone. A friend of mine has the S6 Edge, and when they first updated it to put the thing for the Google Glass or the Google Gears or whatever you call it for the virtual reality headset, that would kick on randomly, and he had no control over it. And we're coming up to a break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking about a laser bazooka, every World War II fighter's dream. Trust me, this is pretty amazing.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to GSMC Technology Podcast. Right now, we're going to talk to you about a 200-watt laser bazooka.
Now, I don't know a whole lot about lasers, so is 200 watts a lot?
200 watts is a lot. So there's a gentleman named Drake Anthony in Southern Illinois. He's 23 years old and a laser enthusiast. And he built a 200-watt laser bazooka. Now, just think about this. The average laser pointer, the average legal wattage for a laser pointer in the United States is 0.5 watts.
Now, is this something that he had to get a license for, or is this something that a hobbyist can do as long as he doesn't, take down an aircraft?
From what I understand, you're allowed to build. Hobbyists are allowed to build lasers. I don't think you need a license for it. I don't think the government's ever been concerned about it, but maybe they should be.
Well, a 200-watt laser, so I'm assuming that's enough to go through wood and cars and...
Well, not cars. But so basically what it is it's a bundle of lasers that is focused through a focusing lens. And this thing is pretty great. There's a video about it, and we'll post the link to the video in the show notes. But according to the maker, according to On Your Unprotected Eyes, it is 33 million times worse than staring at the sun.
So that's, if not instant blindness, that's darn near close.
So it doesn't really look like a bazooka. In the video, it actually looks like a rifle, like a laser rifle, kind of similar to the way that the laser rifle looks in the Fallout games. And so he had to build a special welding mask just for this thing in of itself. And he'd actually made a 40-watt shotgun in the past, and he's got several videos of laser swords and laser things that he creates. But he shows what it can do, and it's completely silent. And he shot the beam and focused it and was able to melt through it was a computer tower.
Now, is it the focus on it adjustable? Is there a knob that he can fine tune the adjustment, make it bigger or smaller?
It doesn't look like it's focusable. I know with a lot of lasers, especially the illegal ones, that you can focus the laser. I actually had a friend in high school who had one that was I think maybe 2 watts or 1.5 watts, and he could actually focus it to the point to where it would burn a hole in your clothes. If it was black. It could burn a small hole, and it actually hurt. Now, with this, he can burn metal. He can burn wood. He's lit a golf ball, or not a golf ball. He lit a ping pong ball on fire and melted through a computer case.
Now, this is just for curiosity, or is this something he plans on selling, or what? Is this just for fun?
He's just a hobbyist.
So what do you do? I'm trying to think of what would he do with it. I mean, I'm assuming that his skill set would be handy for some company. I mean, how do you pick up playing with lasers?
Well, he's going to Southern Illinois University, and I'm not sure exactly what his major is, but probably something in the technology field. Now, one of the things that I'm curious about is that if a kid in his basement can build a 200-watt laser bazooka, what could the government do with this technology? Could we possibly see every kid's dream, lasers being weaponized in the future?
That would be cool. What was it like, the sci-fi trope of having this satellite from space that slowly comes into the planet and lasers somebody from from orbit?
Jeez.
I'm still amazed. I mean, if 200 watts does what you say, how do you start this? I mean, I literally wouldn't even know where to begin. You just go to like laserhobbyist.com and start purchasing stuff.
I'm pretty sure that there are forums and websites just built around Laser Hobbyist. Like, it's kind of a big deal. But as far as building it, he built it like out of like just a lot of things that you could find just laying around your house. I'm sure some of the parts he had to special order. But one of the things that's really interesting about this is that it can blind you. Like, I mean, even if you want to weaponize it in the fact of like just taking out the enemy's eyesight. Like, all I can think about when I see these things is weaponizing it, and it's crazy.
Wow. The other thought is, I wonder if he had a cameraman, because my first thought is, what does this do for a guy who's actually the cameraman? I mean, because I know there's filters and a bunch of things you can do, but
he set up the camera and then used the laser. Yeah,
I wonder if he hurt the camera.
You should check. That was one of the things that I was curious about too. It's like, and I know if he shot at the camera, he would definitely destroy the sensor.
Because I'm thinking, I've got some pretty expensive cameras, and if some dude decided to shoot a 200 watt laser at, I think I'd be quite upset.
He's probably using a little DV camera, to be honest, like a little cheap,
a Sony ham camera.
Yeah, and to note, it did burn a hole through wood, and it did burn a hole through a computer case, but it took a while. You're not going to be able to just do that right away.
So this would be instant burn then?
No.
No, on like a human skin.
On human skin? I don't even want to think about it.
Because my thought is, if it doesn't do a whole lot of damage on quick exposure, minus the eyes, then I'm thinking this would be something for crowd control. You know, you shine it on people, just get their skin hot, and then it would just say...
Well, I think a big problem with that was you'd blind them. Like, I mean, even looking at the beam, I'm pretty sure can probably take out your eyes.
Just by looking at it? By not having a shine in your eyes?
According to what he says, I mean, unprotected eyes, it's 33 million times worse than staring at the sun. I mean, I wouldn't want to even risk looking at that thing at all.
No. Wow. I'm kind of godsmacked about that. I just couldn't imagine. And yeah, you're right. So looking at the guy's website, he's done... The shotgun is another thing I think is interesting. Now, is a guy who's a little bit of a firearm enthusiast. The terms he's using, shotgun and bazooka, is a little bit on the... What do you say? I wouldn't exactly call them anything like the rifle or a shotgun. I think they're closer to rifle than anything else.
Right. And yeah, I definitely agree. I think using the term bazooka was more of a attention getter.
It definitely worked.
Mm-hmm.
The thing I really want to see is I'd love to see if this guy can figure out how to focus it, you know, like more adjustable focus. 'Cause I think if you could do that, I think it would actually have a more military usage.
I don't think that would be very hard at all. If they can do it in little lasers that, you know, you can get in the mail, then you can, you know, now, I'm sure he can make it adjustable.
Now, I really want to see a close-up view. I wonder if the guy's using one focus lens or like multiples. Because if you're using multiples, you can easily put one on some sort of...
It was just one.
See, so you could easily... now, this is kind of a guess. I'm assuming if it's a special optic, you could probably get maybe a couple of made and have it total that and then just put one on like a slider.
Yeah, I could see that happening. And it's interesting, too, because some of the laser lights that they use in foreign countries, I know, even for the military and stuff, can actually, like, cause blindness anyway. And they're like, I was talking to a gentleman who actually works here, David B., and he was telling me that, you know, he knew a guy who, from a laser light, got shot in the eye, and there's a black spot on his eye where he got hit.
What?
Yeah. So legally in the United States, you're only allowed up to a 0.5 watt laser, but in other countries they make far more higher quality or higher wattage lasers, and so
ones any consumer can purchase.
Yeah, consumers can only purchase up to 0.5 watts, but they're really dangerous for your eyes.
So how is this legal to do for an enthusiast?
That's a really good question.
Because if I say, you know, Joe Blow, just can only buy point whatever, I'm surprised the components aren't more controlled. I mean, maybe in the future it's going to be like, you know, the way firearms are, or you're going to have to get like a blanket license that, you know.
Right. And I think it's just one of those things where you just built it in your basement and the government really can't say much about it as long as you're not hurting people. But we'll see what happens in the future.
I'm actually kind of shocked by that because these are things that are incredibly dangerous, but on the other hand, they look fun as hell.
I mean, people make homemade explosives and microwave things all the time on YouTube, and they don't get in trouble. So,
well, some of it, like one of the major thing a lot of YouTubers use is what's called tannerite. It's a binary explosive, if I remember the term correctly. Basically, the only way it can explode is by, for example, tannerite. You have to shoot it. It's the only way it can go off. I'm assuming it's the amount of force applied.
Right.
And there's one particular YouTuber that I've seen that mixes it with gasoline and other things. And tannerite it by itself is not actually illegal. It's not a controlled substance, or you don't need a license to actually buy it. You can buy it at almost any gun store. However, it's generally frowned upon in California because it can cause sparks and stuff like that. And we're coming up towards a break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking about how VR is taking over the world. And is it just the thing of the moment?
Want to find out what movies to go see? Then check out the GSMC Movie Podcast. It's your ticket to the latest movies, whether it's a new blockbuster event, romantic, comedy, or action flick. This show has got it all covered. They talk some what to go see now, don't bother, what's hot on Netflix, and everything in between. That's gsmcpodcast.com/movie-podcast. When it's all about the movies, it has to be this new show. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
And so there's a couple of different things coming in. They're calling it VR sports opportunity. For one thing, I guess what I would call it is Fox News recently signed a 5-year deal to bring more sports VR content to viewers. The deal shows growing interest among broadcasters to try the benefit from this technology. Now, granted, they were saying the thing about 3D TVs a couple of years ago, so I personally think this is more a flash in the pan, at least a little bit. Now, from what I was reading, this might be football, baseball, pretty much any major sport. See, on sporting events, I think it'd be cool, but I don't know how you would do it, because I don't think you could mount a camera above everybody and have it any good. So I'm thinking you'd have to mount it somehow on, say, like a lineman.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could probably put a bunch of GoPros on all of the players and maybe switch around that way, but I don't know if the players would be down with that.
Now, I remember a couple of years ago, and might be 10 years ago, there was one of the Super Bowls. They mounted a bunch of cameras around the arena, and during a replay where they'd pause it, they'd actually see it go to the side and watch it, kind of like the bullet slow motion on The Matrix.
Right, bullet time?
Yeah, no, I think if they did something like that, it would be kind of cool if you were able to do that. But that's not what you and I think about when VR.
No, when I think about VR, I always think about being in control and being the one that's, in the driver's seat.
Yeah, so I don't know how watching something in VR is going to work. And I think the same thing about movies. Now, it's not new. Sony has been talking about doing VR content because Sony owns movie industries. They own video games. They own technology. And so for this is everything in-house. And I don't know how you're going to do like a 3D Avengers because you're not in control of it. And the other thing is you're going to make people puke the way they film movies in shaky cameras.
Right. One of the things that is interesting is, have you seen the 3D cameras that shoot in 360?
I have.
I think they could maybe incorporate that in the VR system for maybe movies and stuff like that, where all these things are going on and you can kind of look around. But I mean, it almost seems like something that people wouldn't want to do because you actually have to put a lot of time and everything into seeing it. You have to watch multiple scenes.
How would you? But you'd have to do post-production in that too. So you'd have to pretty much do 2 different movies.
Oh, it would have to be like 360-degree different movies. Like you'd need to hit it from every angle.
So this would be something good for like Toy Story or even like Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow that came out a number of years ago.
I love that movie.
So I don't know how they're going to do that. Now, I'm really interested. Now, I think the only way they're going to do that, if this is something that specifically for 3D, like the best way to describe it, in the original Aliens movie, the Nostromo was an actual full-on set. Now, the Nostromo was a full enclosed set. Basically, you had to walk in one side, and to leave the ship, you had to walk out the other. Now, with something like that, I could see, because an actual physical set, there's not as much CGI needed, so you could contain everything and it'd do well. But something like Iron Man, for example, where 90% of it is all CG, I don't know how you would do that. The idea of that much CG just seems like it would be a giant pain in the pixel.
Well, and I think it might just turn out to be what they do in video games, where it's like they build the whole world and you're just kind of in it.
Yeah, but see, for video games, I think it'd be fine. But movies, I think you're going to have an issue with, because I don't know if I would watch a movie like that. No,
I wouldn't.
Now, the question would be, when DVDs first came out, I don't know if they still have the option now. There used to be something called angles.
Yes.
And that was the only thing I could think it would be in, was they would be a second angle. Like, for example, in the movie Titanic, I always thought that'd be kind of cool while it was falling down if you could switch to different angles to watch the ship fall. Now, would be something they do? Would it be fixed? Would it allow you to zoom up and go in? And granted, this is probably something that all the higher ups are in there and thinking about. But I don't know. This, even 3D TVs see less than a gimmick than this does at the moment to me.
Now, I don't see it being a big thing for movies, but video games are actually being taken by storm. Steam is doing a lot with virtual reality right now. There's a button on the top right corner, right next to the in-game mode that basically turns your computer into a console, that has the VR setting, and they're making a lot of games with VR capability.
No, see, I don't mean to cut you off, but video games I get, because video games are all in 3D now. They're not like they used to be, where it's all sprites and 2D animation. They're 100% 3D. So once they make the game, they don't really have to do a whole lot. I'm assuming they have to change the cameras, and there's a few other things they probably have to modify. But see, video games make sense to me.
It makes sense to me too, and some of these games look really great, and I'm kind of like sad that I don't have a VR headset, so I can't try some of these out.
The only issue I remember reading, at least specifically about the Oculus Rift, is they were saying the hardware requirements. Now, the Oculus people said it's that $12,000 trash can looking thing by Apple, the Pro.
Right.
They're saying that didn't have enough horsepower to power it.
And I think with some of them too, is it's just a headset and you have your controller.
So does Steam have any do you know if the Steam's version have any hardware requirements to play the games? Because I don't even know anybody who has a headset for even me to remotely borrow.
Right, that's the thing too. Is I don't know anybody with a headset. I don't know anybody that has thought about this, but I know that it's a thing, and I know that it's a thing on Steam that you can do. But I don't think the system requirements would be that bad. I think if you're running like an Oculus Rift or something, you definitely would need some better requirements. But I think with like just a regular headset, I don't think you're going to have that big of a deal. I think it's more of a streaming thing,
No question for you. Do you get motion sickness at all?
Not as much.
Now, see, I want you to imagine yourself on, I don't know, say like that giant, what is it? It's the Gyrotron or something from the fair. Now, if you go on that, will that make you sick?
No.
See, because this is what I'm thinking is going to happen to a lot of people. Maybe just me, because I went to Disneyland one time and it was popping like anti-nausea medication like Pez. So I'm thinking there's going to be two people in when it comes to VR, those who can and those who can't.
Well, and that's the same thing for everything. I mean, like, there were a lot of people who couldn't play the Guitar Hero games because of motion sickness, and there were a lot of people who can't play a lot of video games because of epilepsy and stuff like that.
Wait, rewind that. People couldn't play Guitar Hero because of motion sensitivity?
Yes. I remember when Guitar Hero came out, that was kind of a thing, there was a lot of people who couldn't handle all the angles and couldn't handle all the lights, and actually, there was a gentleman I knew who had epilepsy, and he couldn't play Guitar Hero 1 or 3, but he could play Guitar Hero 2 without having an attack.
See, the epilepsy thing I totally get. In video games, especially there's a lot of flashing lights and other colors, so that I believe. I'm just shocked about the motion sensitivity thing.
Well, I don't know. Like, I mean, you have all these things coming at you. The camera angles are kind of wavy. You know, it's like being at a concert.
I guess I could see that. Now, we're going to switch a little bit. We're going to rewind a little bit. We're going to talk about the Olympics in VR. We kind of did this a little bit out of order. And the Olympics, I'm not a giant fan of the Olympics, but I was thinking maybe this is the one thing that I think would be kind of cool. I just kind of had a revelation. Say if you're watching like football, basketball, boxing, what instead of doing, you know, like you're seeing the first person perspective, what if they're doing it like on the 50-yard line of a Niners game?
I think that's something that I've heard about.
Because that, I think it would be cool. You get the experience of being there. Granted, you don't get the sports scores, but
Maybe you'd get the sports scores and the little tiny thing on the bottom of the screen.
See, that is something I think would be kind of cool. NASCAR, I think, could actually do it even better. They could mount a camera in each car and do it that way.
Virtual reality with NASCAR could be great.
So I'm kind of rewinding my statements a little bit now that I kind of give it some thought. If they did it as a perspective, as a fan or guy in the bleachers, that I think would be cool. That what I would actually watch.
But how many people that watch sports would be interested in that sort of thing?
I think you'd have to be a fan. Like, for example, somebody who's really into MMA, I could see them doing that because they want to see the cage. That I could see.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think it's a really limited audience, to be honest.
I agree.
This is just a very narrow set of people who would just be really into it. I think it's going to be a 3D TV example. I know I keep bringing it up, but when that first came out, I know a lot of people that purchased it. I don't know anybody who still uses it.
Right. Well, and I think that VR will be a thing for video games. I can definitely see that being a thing. But I movies and stuff like that, I think it's a fad.
And I don't know if anybody out there is old enough to remember this, but back in the 90s, virtual reality was really starting to be a big thing. And so I think what it's going to be is it took roughly a decade, maybe two, for the technology to catch up to where it was at least viewable. I think this is something in the future it's going to be a bigger thing. I still think we're very early days with when it comes to virtual reality. I think when you get 4K, 8K, I think it's going to be better because the graphics are going to catch up to it. But yeah, I definitely think this is gaming. I don't think anybody is going to be interested in watching sporting events because half the thing about watching sporting events at home is being with your buddies or your family and hanging out. The problem with virtual reality, it's a very limited thing.
I feel like it would be really hard to drink a cold one with a VR set on your head.
You'd need a straw or one of those, those helmets with the beer on either side.
Oh, drinking beer out of a straw is sin.
So I don't know. So ladies and gentlemen, we've had a great show. We talked about Windows 10, BlackBerry's new phones, a Laser Bazooka, and virtual reality, and a little bit more. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to go to the GSMC Tech Podcast Facebook page. This is episode 14. And I want you to tell us what you think. Do you love this episode? Do you hate this episode? Is there anything that you would tweak or you would love to add as far as next week in the stories go? And I also want you to subscribe to this podcast by going to gsmcpodcast.com. We have great podcasts out there like MMA, Weird News, and more. But before you do that, I want you to subscribe to the best podcast on the GSMC network. That's this podcast, the Tech Podcast. You can catch us on iTunes and almost everywhere on the interwebs. And I'm Jonathan Charney.
I'm Shay Northrup.
And as always, thank you for listening.